Hello everyone, my name is Thomas, but I'm not here to tell you my name. I am from Belgium and I've been building Django applications for over a decade. Mostly one long-running application that I started 14 years ago. Today we're going to talk about front-end, which is an emotional topic. I get it. What I'm sharing today comes from my own journey and my own needs. If your stack works for you, that's great. No judgment. HTMX is a front-end library of peace. That said, using HTMX with Django is, according to me, the best way to create modern-day web applications. And over the next 30 minutes, I'll show you why. Let's maybe start with what makes an app feel great to use. So I created a sort of mental framework, which I call the 3 pillars of great user experience. First one is design. So is the interface visually consistent and pleasant? Second one, clarity. Is the app easy to use and to understand? And third one is speed. Does the app feel responsive and fast? The pillars are not equal. So speed is the most important one. If your app feels slow, your users are going to get frustrated, no matter how pretty or how clear it is. Clarity comes second. Users need to understand what is happening or what they need to do, where to go. If not, they feel lost and they give up. And design is last. It's still important, but a beautiful UI means nothing when it's slow and confusing. Here's a little example that I find fun to watch at. It's like Windows 98. You see, like it's kind of clear what you can do, what you can click on, what accepts input. The design is ugly, although I kind of like it. And then on the right you have Google Calendar, which is the design is good, it looks good, but like what is clickable, what accepts input, it's not very clear. So clarity is more important than design. So the page refresh. This is the villain of the story. This is what basically divides front-end developers and basically all web developers. The page refresh is our brain really hates it. Whenever it happens, like the page flickers for a second, it's kind of like when you're reading a book and you read like a phrase or a paragraph and then the book closes, reopens again, and you kind of need to know where you're at again. That's what it feels like. Why do we have the page refresh? Where does it come from? Who invented the page refresh, or who committed this merge request? You know, well, actually, it's kind of a quirk of HTTP and HTML. Back in the day, when HTML was first generated, it was you had documents with links on them, and you click on a link and you go to the new document, and that's how you have the page refresh. It was like that. It was good in the beginning. You know, in the 90s, people, you know, you had information like wow. And then you could click and you could go to a new page. But it sort of got annoying and people were trying to find solutions for it. Why is this still here? Why has nobody fixed the page refresh? The thing is with HTML is that it's kind of a public domain technology. And if you want to change things in HTML, everybody needs to agree on this. And that's why HTML over the years has not evolved at all, or the core HTML, it looks like it's still from the 90s. Backend technologies can evolve much faster because the browser doesn't really care about what backend technology you use. You can write your own backend code and it will work. But frontend, everybody needs to agree, so that's why it's slow. So then people started finding workarounds. There is different types of workarounds, which we will basically look at. So in the 1990s, you had HTML, which was great. Then in 2005, Ajax came around. It was apparently Google who started with Gmail. So you had the possibility in Gmail to suddenly like edit an email, send it, delete it without refreshing the page, and it felt like an application. And yeah, people thought it was great, and they had to, they wanted to continue this. Everybody wanted to continue this. Like nobody likes the page refresh, of course. Then in 2009, you had jQuery come around, and these dates are more or less, maybe 1 year or 2 years wrong, but more or less during that time, jQuery came around, and this was kind of a sort of wrapper around the complicated vanilla JavaScript, let's say, and Ajax, and it was kind of made everything simple to create these interactive, nice applications. And this is when my journey kind of started. In 2011, I started building a software management business system. And yeah, of course, I wanted to be a bit interactive, and I started using jQuery for the interactivity. When you click like a save button, you don't want the whole page to refresh, you just want that little part to be updated and to be very fast. This, I dug into the code from a long time ago, and I looked at this. Yeah, who has written code like that? Who still has code like this in their code base? Who is still actively writing like this? Oh, a few, nice. I still have this in my code base because I refactored it, but some parts are still like that, and yeah. So basically what this is doing is, on the top, you have something happens. An event happens in the UI, in the client side. Then you prepare the request with Ajax. Then you make the request. So you make the request to the backend. And then if it's a success, you change something on the screen. And if it's a failure, you change something else to the screen. So this is basically how I, and a lot of people back in the day were writing interactive applications. It was great, but it felt very hacky. Every time I was writing this, I was like, what is this? It worked, but it was very dirty. I don't know. When I was writing this, but it worked. That was the only way, basically. And then React came around in 2013, and everybody was talking about it, and I had my application that I was building for a couple of years with a lot of code in it, and I was like, should I move to React, yes or no? And I was looking at this code, and I was like, this is so ugly. This is a mess. I cannot work with this anymore. I need to go to React. React will clean this all up. Thanks to React, everything will be good. So I tried React. For 1 month, I did a tutorial of React, and I was like, okay, let's do this. And I ended up with something like this. And I was like, this is not easier. What is this? I couldn't wrap my head around what the concept was, because I was used to jQuery templating. I just thought it was like a sort of framework around jQuery or whatever. So I started doing this, and then I realized what the impact was for my application to go to this. And then, yeah, I decided to go back to jQuery. So I accepted my fate. I was like, came back to the old love, let's say. And then I just tried to make it better, make it cleaner, try to have some helper functions with jQuery. But it still felt really hacky. But I continued to do it. Until one beautiful day in the summer of 2021, I was looking at a tutorial, and suddenly they were talking about HTMX. And the moment I saw what HTMX was, I understood that this was a solution. And really, it was like an eye-opening moment, like as if the sky opened up and the sun shined down on me and God gave me this gift. It was the most beautiful day, one of the most beautiful days of my life. So I started refactoring all my code base, and yeah, I'll show you that after. There's a funny meme that says kind of what I just explained. It's kind of what I had as well. 2004, it's like very simple, let's say. Then 2019, you had this complicated front-end framework mania. I'm not going to say that, but a lot of people were using it. And then HTMX came out, and everything was simple again. Going back to Ajax, who knows what it stands for? Asynchronous JavaScript, indeed. It stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. For the longest time, I thought it meant asynchronous JSON and XML or whatever. I thought it was JSON. I thought that Ajax has to be JSON API endpoints, which is not true. Because the XML, HTML is actually XML. So I think the name should have been Aja, maybe with the H, so that people would have understood, oh, you can do HTML with it. And we might have not gone this route. Maybe 10 years ago, we would have realized you can actually return HTML. And you could, but nobody really realized. Until Carson Gross came around with HTMX and basically explained to everyone that you can, or made it clear to everyone that you can have API endpoints with Ajax. And there's this nice phrase: it sometimes takes a genius to point out the obvious, and it's really clear here that thanks to what he made with HTMX, that everything was clear all of a sudden. There's also a nice meme that explains kind of this whole slide, which why go from DB to JSON to JS to HTML when you can go from DB to HTML straight away. So the just-in-time philosophy. Basically, it means to only fetch data you need when you need it. Forms, models, dropdowns. Also, try to fetch the data in an asynchronous way. You also need runners, which need to be very fast and lightweight. And I'll explain what runners are after. And you also have lots of small API endpoints that return HTML. So this is the application I've been working on. It's a modern application, usually looks like this. You have like a side menu, you have a top menu, and you have dynamically loaded content in the middle. The idea is that you don't want to reload the side menu and the top menu. You only want to load the content because it makes everything faster. And there's a nice way to do this in HTMX. So when you load HTMX, it's a library, so you just load in the JavaScript. And then you can do hxBoost true on the body tag. And this will make all of the links all of a sudden work with Ajax or JavaScript. That's very nice, because if you have now a link, you can basically say, okay, this link, what returns from this link, from this API endpoint, you need to put it in this target, which is the main content. So the main content is the thing in the middle. So whenever you click on this, put whatever you have in the main content. And what is nice as well is that inside of your templates, what you can do is you can say, okay, if this is a request made with HTMX, then we're going to use the base HTMX and not the real base. The base holds everything, like the whole DOM, the JavaScript, the CSS, everything. But the base is actually super small. The HTMX base, only holds the content. So that way, when the backend sends something, you can ignore all of everything outside of the content. So really only send through a small part of HTML, which makes the request super fast because you're not bloating every request with a lot of data. So what are data fetchers or runners? It's also a sort of mental framework that I created, is so that whenever a request happens in the client, you have like a runner that runs to the server, gets what's needed, and then runs back. Yeah, it's AI generated, so. So yeah, and these runners need to be super fast. I kind of like this analogy because I was a waiter before, and I was always running to the backend and bringing things to the front. So that's kind of what requests are. So whenever, this is a traditional request. So you have the client, somebody on the client makes a request, the runner goes to the backend and fetches the dashboard and fetches everything. So fetches the complete DOM, the main navbar, the context processors, the middlewares also. I mean, it goes through the middlewares, the filters, the graphs, the JavaScript, basically everything, which makes him super slow because he has to carry a lot of things. So what you actually want to do is you want to make your runner super fast. And how do you do that? Is like I showed with HTMX before, is you make him run to the backend and you only make him come back with small HTML It has to go to the context processors and the middlewares, which I'll discuss after. But basically what you want is that you have, when the request comes back to the client, you have the smallest amount of HTML possible and the smallest amount of drag possible. So that way your runner is super fast. So you don't load the main navbar, you don't load the complete DOM. You don't even load pieces that are on the dashboard. What you can do is then in that small initial HTML, you can add some HTMX code to go and fetch a specific HTML partial from the backend. So here we have a partial which is get sales graph. It's kind of a slow partial because you need to go and fetch from the database all of the sales, create it into a nice graph, send it over. What is good about this is that you can have multiple runners at the same time. So when you initiate your dashboard shell, you can make multiple runners, and all of them run at the same time to the backend to go and fetch their small HTML. What does that look like in the code? So you have the dashboard shell. This is where you are going to, this is what is being sent back initially. So it's almost nothing, basically. It's 24 lines of HTML, so very fast, there is something on the screen for the user. And in there we have 3 divs, and they all go to the backend to get the sales, the top clients, and the low stock widget. You have a little loader in there, so that way when the user initially comes to the dashboard, they have some loaders and something is going on, and the 3 runners at the same time, they go and get the data in an asynchronous way. This is what the backend looks like, so the view. So you have a very small view where you basically just render a template, partial you could use it, just a template, with some context, and that way your runner is super fast and doesn't have a lot. So what is important to note is that middleware and context processors really drag down. So try to keep your middleware as small as possible, and also context processors, basically, I would say don't use them at all. Only use them because context processors are run at all template design rendering, but they are really slow because they do it every time, even things you don't need. So if you have context processors only, and the context processor to go to the database, make sure it's cached, make sure that there is as least amount of drag possible for your runners. Oh yeah, there's a live demo. So this is the dashboard I just showed with the same partials. And as you can see, when you click on the dashboard, it loads in all of these individual... Oh, sorry. So like this. Wait, do I have to go? Okay. So let's go to the dashboard. Let's load the dashboard again. And as you see, it's really super fast. You just click it, and instantly something happens. And this is really nice for the brain, because something is happening. Because if you have to wait, people, they unconsciously think it's broken. Did I do something wrong? What happens? And then, boom, something happens. That's not really nice for the cognitive brain. What you want is something happening. And here, all of these little cards, they are kind of slow to render, especially if you have a lot of data in the database. They become slow. So you don't want to wait for all of them to be rendered and then render them. You want to have this, this asynchronous way of showing content on the screen. Okay. And this concept of fetching data in a sort of asynchronous way, we have implemented this kind of everywhere in the code. Not only for rendering partials, but also for when the user is requesting something. So here we have a button which is an add contact button. Usually when you are on a list view, you have a add button. What we do is we show a model, a pop-up, and here, when we show this button, there is nothing yet. This is the only thing that has been loaded on the screen. And it's only when the user asks for the form that we go and fetch it and show it to the client. And I'm going to show that. Can I do like this? Sorry, I have to do it again like that. What also is nice is, what I can show you is, oh, sorry, it's in. Sorry, it's in QWERTY. So this is, what I showed you just before was localhost. This is live. So even in live, when you see, it's like super fast. And these runners, they kind of run through internet cables or below the sea. And so it's like almost instant. And this is really what you want in an application. Oh. Yeah, sorry about that, but. So what I want to show you now is when you are on the list view. List views in general are kind of slow and heavy, and you have like a filter, you have a button, add button, you have a lot of things. But a list view, 90% of the time, people, they might not click on the add contact button. So why would you in the backend preload this? Because it's not going to be used anyways. It's slowing down everything. Your user gets annoyed. So here what we have done is when you click this button, it will make the request to the server to get the form, and then it's being rendered like that. So that's again for speed. One thing that is nice as well that I'm going to show you is we have kind of recreated the Django admin. When you are on a form and you add like a foreign key, it opens like a pop-up window. We have kind of created that as well here. So when you create a product, you have the initial form that loads. You have like this little plus, and then you click on it. And you have another form that kind of opens up and where you can add a test category. You add it and it gets created here in the form. So that's also something that's super easy to build when you use this technique. You basically have endpoints for specific HTML and data, and you can just add them everywhere in your code, and it's really super easy. So, as you remember before that jQuery example that I showed, this is kind of the same, but with HTMX. So, something happens, a click happens, you prepare the request, so you show something on the screen, so something is happening. You make the request to the server, and you change stuff on the screen. So that ugly line of jQuery, of 30 lines of code, suddenly was changed into 4 lines of code, and as well on the button, not somewhere else. So that's the beauty of it. You write your code where things happen. And that's really one of the most beautiful things about HTMX, is that it's just right there. Yeah, in the UI, you also have, of course, a filter. Let me just do it like that. You have the filter, and this filter sometimes they can be very heavy. You know, you have maybe 5,000 contacts, and when you load the filter and you don't do it properly, you're loading 5,000 selects. You shouldn't do that, but even then, sometimes you have 30, 40 select options, and that takes a long time to render. Again, maybe the person is not going to use it. Most likely, he's not going to use it. So why preload this? It's slowing down for nothing. So what we have done for the filter, again, you have an endpoint for that filter. And there, the HX trigger is whenever the page loads, then we are sending the runner to fetch the form, because that will make the initial load fast. And whenever the user is ready to click on it, he just clicks on it and it's there. It makes 2 requests to the server that you need to take into account, but that's normally not an issue. What we also do is this is a nice thing that we have like generic endpoints for forms in the backend. So you just have this URL, get generic form, you give the name and it will return you the proper filter. I'd like to go more into details about that, but that's for another talk. So these are the most popular filter triggers we use. So whenever you click that the request happens, that can be interesting, like for when you click on the create, only then it happens. The load happens whenever the page loads, so that means you can hide the slowness basically by making 2 requests. You also have mouse over, which is nice, so only when the person moves over a button that you load, this is handy for drop-downs, for example, only when the user moves over it, we're going to load whatever is in the drop-down. There is a lot of techniques and like little gold nuggets in HTMX that I will not be able to cover today. One nice thing as well is if you have the cards, for example, on the dashboard, what you can do is, I think I can do it like this. Yeah. What you can do here is when you return something, when you return a response from the server, you can basically put an HX trigger. And this will, when this request arrives to the front end, it will basically tell that runner, hey, go and update that card. So that's really beautiful. That's really nice. So yeah, with HTMX, what you see is what's happening on the screen. There is no magic layers, no hidden files controlling the UI, no layers of abstraction. Just like Leonardo, painting directly on the canvas, you need to be able to work where you see the result immediately and tangibly, and without layers in between. And when you're developing like that, you basically move faster, with more confidence, and your creativity flows, and most importantly, you enjoy building again. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of DjangoCon.
Thank you. Very nice talk. I was wondering, do you have public sources, resources for diving deeper into the topic that you can recommend?
The HTMX website itself is really nice. Just go to HTMX and there is like a ton of examples, ton of... I started doing this technique in 2021 when, I mean, this way of working in 2021, so I've built over the years kind of like my own custom views in the backend to handle this, and not everything was clear in the beginning, but over the years I developed like some views in the backend, like generic views that are really nice, that make it possible to have like just small pieces of HTML that do things in the backend. I mean, to make it super simple actually to develop. But this is not public, so this is our proprietary code base, let's say, that we don't share. But once you start working like this, it should be super easy to get going, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, thanks for the talk. So how do you manage state? What I mean by that is, let's say you're sharing a particular URL and you're pointing out that, you know, if you follow this URL, you could reach at this particular state. Like, let's say if you're sharing Amazon's comment or something, or let's say you have, you're reaching out to a point with a ID on the HTML element. With this dynamically loading stuff, it becomes more like an app, right? You cannot actually statically link to any of the state in the page.
But the thing is, there is no state with this way of working. The state comes from the backend, and the state actually is the HTML itself. So you can start working with HTML itself, which is actually in XML, which is a sort of JSON format, which is the state. And when you start working like that, it's kind of a mind shift that you have to have, but basically everything happens from the backend. The front end is kind of dumb, and everything is happening in the backend, which means you have only one state, which is the whole beauty of this, which means that if you want to do something, you can just do it in a matter of minutes, like instead of with, again, I'm not very familiar with front-end frameworks, but I heard that when you want to implement a new endpoint, you need to agree with the front end to do this. And here, with this way, you basically do everything, and you are in control, and everything is just right there. It's super easy. So, yeah, that's my answer.
Just to follow up that, so let's say if you're pointing out that you want the person, client customer, to reach to one particular point in the page, but that ID is not loaded unless and until you particularly do a kind of action. You know what I mean? So if you want the page to scroll down at the bottom, yeah. So
I'm not sure exactly what you mean because I'm really not in the same mindset as working with like two front ends. For me, this is the only thing I know basically how it works. So I know it's just the backend that sends everything to the front end, and then in the front end there is not really a state. We kind of use Alpine.js for some tiny state management, but almost nothing. So I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question.
Hello, I have a value pack of questions. 3 for the cost of 1. I have a big app in production with HTMX, and we had struggles on security because at some point we decided to add a CSP. Have you had this problem too?
A CSP? What do you mean with that?
A content security policy.
But what was the issue?
Every HX attribute on HTML was treated like inline JavaScript, so it was forbidden.
By the browser or by the...
By the browser, because you had a CSP. So you didn't meet that problem in real life?
No, I don't think there is any security issues with this, because this is... Actually, HTMX is just JavaScript. So
yes, but it's just inline JavaScript in reality, so we had to extract a lot of code from the HTML to put it back in JS files. So it was a bit disappointing, but we could manage to make it work.
But there is no need for that. I would like to see what security issue there were.
I can show you, I have it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
And my colleague is a bit disappointed because we have a lot of very small views and small roots which do only one thing. I like it, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me or with him?
I cannot answer that. That's his problem.
His problem. Okay.
It's his problem. Yeah, a lot of people they don't like this way of working because it's not how they were taught, or it's not how they do things, which is normal. You know, it's like there is a million different ways to build a house. Some people don't like this way and do it that way. It's whatever you prefer, and for my use case and for how I work, this really works wonders.
Well, we don't have enough time to take more questions, but you can find the speaker after or at lunch.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you again.
Thanks.